20 heartbroken families lost a child in the Sandy Hook school shooting. I know how much it hurts. My 9-year-old daughter was murdered in the Tucson shooting. I have one question for our political leaders. When will you find the courage to stand up to the gun lobby? Whose child has to die next? To every mother, we cannot wait. We have to demand a plan. Go to demandaplan.org and add your name.
Mayors Against Illegal Guns Action Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Now that ad comes from Mayor Bloomberg's Coalition, and it started airing today in D.C. and 6 cities affected by mass shootings. It's all part of Mayor Bloomberg's big push for tougher gun laws, and trust me, this is not going to be the last ad or the last time you'll see him involved in this. Expect him to put a lot of his own resources into this fight. Now, Vice President Joe Biden, who's spearheading the White House's task force on the issue, he's working with Bloomberg, and he plans to speak with key lawmakers and stakeholders in this debate, including, as Jessica mentioned, the NRA. President Obama, he's indicated that he's going to try, and this is important here, not just a soundbite, because I believe they're going to do this, rally public support here when it comes to gun control. White House even considering reaching out to Walmart and other gun retailers to help build public support for a universal background check system, something that wouldn't hurt them in terms of their bottom line, but and also help them when it comes to liability issues even down the line. So the question that I want to really bring everybody here in is, I think there was consensus at the beginning that if the margins or the polar ends of the, forget the parties, but of the groups here dictate the agenda, it's going to be the same thing that happened before. So, you're the White House now, and I don't think it's coincidental. Who have we heard from? I've heard from mayors. I've heard from law enforcement. I've heard from victims of this. And I've heard from the likes of the Gabby Giffords, who, while is a victim, is also a relatable face. Mm-hmm. I think they're trying to do something here, Dominic, that's not just haphazard. I think they're trying to go outside of the usual stakeholders and try and get the public invested in this thing here. And at least from the first things I've seen, it makes the most amount of sense of any time I've ever seen after a shooting.
They really are trying, but I really don't think it's going to work, Richard, because no matter what initiative they come up with, the NRA is going to fight back. And it's a familiar argument, and no disrespect to my good friend Jessica, but as soon as they come up with a plan, here's what you're going to hear. It's a familiar argument. Oh, enforce the laws that are already on the books. No matter what reasonable plan.
Why can't that be a piece of it, though?
It should be. Okay. It should be. But what about gun control? What about controlling the guns? What about protecting the majority of us and still letting people have their rights?
I don't think it's even, I don't think, with all due respect, it's any more about the majority of us. I think if they make the argument protecting the children, okay, and don't give me this stupidity of arming the lunch lady like I heard from LaPierre, and that's ridiculousness. If they make this about little kids, okay, and how we protect children, and it's not just the 20 kids in Newtown. It's not just on schools. It's kids getting shot by drive-bys. It's kids getting killed here, and the numbers every day. I've been going through the numbers here.
Certain kids killed by drive-bys, it don't matter.
Right.
Certain kids in urban communities killed by drive-bys, it really doesn't matter.
Where I'm getting at is, I think that you can communicate that message, Dominic, and the NRA is the most overhyped. We saw it in the last election. How much did the NRA spend it? How much did they really impact elections?
Well,
Bupkis.
Yeah, they spent millions and
didn't do anything.
No.
So this paranoia and this fear of living, you talk from a Republican perspective. It's not that you can't go against the NRA for certain things. I mean, do you imagine if somebody said, you know what, I believe we should have a database, and the NRA is going to run a public campaign against them? The NRA would be vilified for that if a Republican did that, right?
Yeah, but I don't think any lawmaker should be beholden to one single group. But I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a really interesting op-ed in the Times last week, and it was Dianne Feinstein's previous chief counsel who worked on the bill under the last assault weapons ban. And I thought he laid out a really articulate argument about how they got it done the last time. And they didn't take the traditional step of just saying, oh, we want to ban assault weapons. They reached out to gun advocates and sportsman groups and said, okay, if we do a background check then what would you guys be open to if there's like a 24-hour time frame? And they gave givebacks, and it was a compromise.
But that's also one of the reasons why the assault weapons ban in '94 was like Swiss cheese with so many holes in it and so many loopholes.
It's Swiss cheese, but now you're advocating for the same bill. So it was something. It was something, but they were able to go and get the votes that they needed. So why are you going to dismiss that?
I know you're not advocating, but look at what the other side has fought for. They fought that you can be on a terror watch list and be able to buy a gun. They fought to let people bring guns into bars. They fight to protect, somebody that had a convicted felon to be able to get his guns back. But they fight for to make these. To me, if we try and have this conversation like there's these two rational sides that are trying to find a middle ground, one side believes that any restrictions of any kind on any gun owner is an infringement of their Second Amendment rights. You can't have a rational debate in the middle. You have to go around them and have a conversation with the American public to say,
because they are the American public. They're people that are legal gun owners.
But they are not the majority of the American public.
They're a very small percentage of the American public. They are to this debate what the ACLU is to the rest of the Bill of Rights.
The NRA, the majority of the NRA owners, they support the idea of a universal background check, but their leadership doesn't.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying I think that there is room to find some common ground legislation here, but you can't just blindly go out there and say that. And by the way, they have tons of facts and figures and stats that back up their arguments that they consistently
The only number I care about is, in the Western world here, more people die in America with guns by a multiple than anywhere else.
By legal, law-abiding gun owners? No.
Yes.
No, that's not true, Richard.
But do you think it's more likely? I'm just sorry, Jess. I didn't want to go down. Do you think it's more likely that a person's going to die in a household by a loved one or someone they know than killing an intruder?
I don't know the answer to that question. If you're arguing that violent crimes are committed by legal, law-abiding gun owners, that's just simply not true. We do have a gun problem in the state.
Then we get into a situation like this, okay? And I know we're heavy, but take the situation in Newtown. I know the lunatic Lanza killed his mother. Let's say he didn't kill his mother, okay? Mm-hmm. There would be no criminal liability for her. Possibly not even any civil liability. So let's see what happens. You're a victim. You lose a loved one to the shooting. You can't go after the manufacturer because they're the only industry in America that has complete immunity. By the way, thank you to the NRA.
I agree with that.
Ridiculous. You can't go after the seller. Okay, he sold it. He said, "Hey, I just sold it to legal. What do you want from me?"
Well,
but you have time for a second. You would be legal in this country to have somebody that was diagnosed with a mental illness to have access in a household to guns. And they would fight any idea to restrict the availability of guns in a household where you have somebody who's off their rocker. That's why I'm saying this debate, I'm so tired of fighting on the margins for it. Yes, a right to bear arms, absolutely. But look at, this is going to get bogged down into the Second Amendment when that's not what this is about.
You commit a crime and you are responsible for that crime. If your child committed a crime, would you want to be held responsible for it? If your child got in an accident and killed someone, would you want the car maker to be responsible for that? Would you want to be held responsible for that? I get what you're saying.
No.
But it's a
there is not even. We can't even
instance
talk about in this country about putting trigger locks, making it mandatory on guns.
Can't
we can't talk about micro-stamping in it. So it's only the owner can own the thing.
That conversation is being had across the country. Of course
it is. What does the NRA say every time it's brought up?
You're talking about one group, but poll individual people about that. Poll individual lawmakers about that.
The NRA is always going to object to any aspect of gun
control.
That's their job.
That's their mission statement, Rich. The key for gun control advocates is to go around the NRA, get past them, and go directly to the lawmakers or the individuals themselves and convince them that that policy is the better option. What's the one thing that breaks through all of this? Unfortunately, it's tragedy and horror and misery. And if you want to talk about an approach that gun control advocates should be taking, that was an effective ad that we saw from the mother of the girl who was killed in Tucson. That's not enough. To see her talking off a telephone, that's not enough. You're going to have to take us back to Tucson. You're going to have to take us back to Aurora. You're going to have to take us back to Newtown. The screams and the blood and the pain and the misery, you're going to have to get people who weren't directly involved back in that place and
You're gonna
time
have
where
to
they
see
were
like
that
a
day.
MAD campaign, or you're going to have to see a smoking
Yes.
campaign.
Okay, but you just got done talking about how the NRA has no juice. So why are you putting all of your blame towards them and saying that they're the single impediment towards getting anything
Because
done?
to me,
It's one or the other.
I think there has been, and I believe, fairly or not, that the Republican Party used to live in fear that Grover Norquist, because they signed a pledge, they couldn't do anything with taxes. Now we all know, why were they afraid of the guy in the first place?
Well,
secondarily, okay, they live that if you go against the NRA, you're going to get primaried. And I believe it's an unreasonable fear. But at some point, like Andrew said, go around it. And I think we're going to find out whether it works or not. I don't even know we're disagreeing on this one, but I think we're going to find out one way or the other, because I think that's the only way it's going to come to a head, because they will never meet you halfway. I thought, by the way, that LaPierre press conference.
How about 10% of the way? How
They're
about
not
10%?
gonna get 2%.
Right, they won't give you anything.
I know we're heavy, I'm sorry. Keep this conversation going online. Go to Facebook, Twitter, make your opinion heard. Do you think after Newtown we're going to see real gun reform, or 3 months from now we're going to say, well, same old, same old? All right, we take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to head to New Jersey, where Governor Christie had his big State of the State today. Plus, Bloomberg's pick for success may not be who you think it is. Stay with us.